there. This is Christine Deane, your DFW Networking Diva, connecting you to who you want to know. And this is another episode of DFW Networking Diva. We have so many cool people that we talk to. We get to interact with all these different business owners, and we talk about entrepreneurship and things that are important to small businesses. And I'm really excited today because I have my friend Trey Rush, and I'm just going to bring him on and say, hey, Trey.
Hey, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to see you. I mean, gosh, we've known each other for years, so this is great. It was about time we had you on there.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, with Trey's been doing all sorts of stuff he's been focused on saving business owners money. As long as I've known you, that's been your focus. And I love that because I know for a lot of small businesses, right, trying to make ends meet, get those expenses down and, you know, the income up coming in and finding that balance and wanting to expand. I mean, there's so much to keep in mind when it comes to small business. And as a small business owner yourself, you totally understand that.
Absolutely.
Well, so you had mentioned to me that there are some new rules and regulations going on in this finance thing. And I'm like, oh, Trey, you can't expect me to understand this. I need you to come on and explain to everybody how this works. So what is it that we're concerned about? Talk to me a little bit about what's coming on.
Okay, so in order to get through that, we need a very short backstory for it to really make sense. And businesses take credit cards for payments, right? Been that way for decades. So the way it normally works is you sign up with a processor, customer comes in, they pay with a card, the processor takes a fee, usually right around 3% plus or minus, but roughly about that. They deposit the rest of the money in your account. So you pay $100, you end up getting $97, processor takes $3. Okay, that's kind of been the standard. About 10 years ago, maybe a little bit earlier than that, businesses started adding fees or ways to offset that cost to the business, because it's usually like the fourth or fifth most expensive thing that a business pays for. There's like rent, payroll, inventory, and then from there, payment processing is usually like kind of right there. So it could be thousands of dollars. So Visa, MasterCard didn't like that. They didn't like that their experience, their product is being upcharged in a way that they viewed as being negative. So they basically told everyone you can't do that anymore. There was a court case in New York called Expressions Hair Design where Visa got involved. It was a whole thing. Long story short, went all the way up to the all the way up to the top to the Supreme Court, where Visa lost. They lost big. And so they came up with surcharging. And basically it said that you could add a fee to credit card transactions, but you had to follow a huge list of rules. Not really anything hard, but it was a process. And so processors were like, well, how can we get around this? What's the workaround? And they came up with a program like industry-wide called cash discount. And the funny thing about cash discount is it's kind of a discount, but not really. It's more of an upcharge than a discount, but that's what it's called. Same way that the fees that you pay in credit cards is called a discount, even though you're paying for it. So it's not really a discount. I digress. Anyway, so the way the program would work is you would come in, you would pay $100. There's usually a sign if the owner's being somewhat transparent, and it says, we're charging a 3 to 4% fee to everyone. Okay. And then if you pay cash, we give you a 3 to 4% discount. So they're adding it and then taking it away. Right. So they're adding the fee, bumping it to, let's say 103. And then if you pay me cash, it goes back down to 100. So if you pay card, you pay 103. If you pay cash, it's 100. It's still an upcharge. It's still a pass through. Right. And so Visa has been very lax about enforcing this for a long time. Because they're still a multi-billion dollar company. But as of 2023, there's been some major shifts happening, major things changing. All the processors that thought, oh, it's basically like jaywalking. They're never going to enforce it. They're never going to pay attention to it. It's off their radar. Well, it's on their radar in a big way now.
Okay, now, Trey, I'm going to jump in at this point and make sure we're understanding. Okay, so they've got this cash discount. So you're like, okay, it's going to cost you more, but now it's not going to cost you more because you gave it to me in cash. Now, what part were they not enforcing?
Great question. Should have mentioned that. So going back to the surcharge, right? The program that Visa rolled out that they said they were forced, but they said you can do. A couple of those rules are you can't add that fee to a debit card. That's the big one. You can't add it to a debit card. You have to register with Visa. You have to have the right signage. It has to be transparent. You can't charge more than the actual cost of acceptance, that type of thing. Well, what Cash Discount was doing is adding that fee to all transactions, right? So that would include debit.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you paid cash, they gave you that discount. They would take it away. So in reality, Visa has now come out and said that anytime a customer goes to the counter or pays and the amount they pay is higher than the posted price or advertised price or invoice price, it is considered a surcharge now. So that's been the gray area, right? Well, is it dual pricing? Is it surcharge? Like, what is it? Because in that court case, they won or Visa lost due to free speech rights. So the thought was, well, as a business owner, I have the free speech right to communicate my pricing however I want. If I have 2 prices, 3 prices, if I do cash discount, that's my business. Well, Visa has worked around that, and because they're not technically breaking the ruling, because they have their program out there. They provided a way to surcharge, but they can have the rules that they have in place in order to make sure people follow it. And the big one is debit. Now, as of April 15th, another big change is, in order for them to ramp up enforcement, is they've dropped the cap from 4% down to 3%, which is huge, because if you're surcharging, that's all the profit margin for the most part for these processing companies. And it's mostly been done as a way to catch all these people doing these non-compliant programs. And there's, millions and millions of these programs have been sold as a cash discount program that pretty much overnight are now non-compliant. And
okay, so I'm going to take this, Trey. All right. So we've got business owners. They bought into this cash discount thing. They've been maybe following some of the rules, but not all the rules. Maybe it hasn't been done exactly like it was supposed to. Now they're like, okay, but now what do I do? My system still does that, right? Now it's against the rules. It's not compliant, but it's not my fault. I bought it from this company and they're the one that set it up that way. So am I liable as a business owner, or can I blame the company and they're the one that gets the fine, or how's this work?
Well, and that's the crazy part. That very question is what is everyone is asking right now. Like there's no solid answer, and Visa has been more clear about this than they have been in a long time. Now, I should probably stop and say I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. However, it is my professional opinion based on my years of experience and people that I've had interactions with that are well known in the industry.
So, Trey, these are the kind of questions you're seeing amongst the business owners that you've been working with. And you say, based on your experience, tell everybody about your experience, because I've known you for years, but everybody else hasn't. So what is this experience you're referring to?
Well, I got in the processing world in 2013. I was in the gym industry for a decade before that, and it was my first like real job, I guess you would say, where I was working 9 to 5, benefits, all that good stuff, normal hours, banker hours, pretty close. And that's when I learned the ropes. I learned what processing was, and I was working for a company that was not very ethical. And being new, you don't realize these things yet, right? You don't know what you don't know until you get into it. Well, after a couple of years, they started figuring out that it wasn't all the other companies that were being unethical. It was the one I was working for as well. So I got out, went independent, got a mentor that was doing the same thing, worked a deal with a few reputable processors out there, and have been independent ever since. And I've really been enjoying it. Most people that do what I do are commission sales reps. And that's
absolutely. And Trey, I come back from that history also. I also spent some time doing merchant services. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, merchant services is like merchant marines, ships. What is this merchant service? Credit card processing. Oh, right. I mean, we already start off with language that people don't understand, right? It doesn't get any better from there. And how many people understand credit card processing, how it works, what the rules are? Most of this stuff is new to business owners. They don't even know where to start on this kind of stuff. So it's so nice when we have somebody like you that understands how this works, and your goal is to help save the business owner money with something that they obviously need for their business, but you're not trying to gouge them and come up with all sorts of crazy pricing. And I've seen the back end of it, and I know what you're talking about.
Yep. And it's crazy because the industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. I mean, we pretty much facilitate all commerce in the country. I mean, think about it. I mean, it's a $6-7 trillion economy now. And I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but I would venture to say 90% of transactions are done on credit card now versus cash. So, I mean, you do the math, and it's still widely unregulated. I mean, as a sales rep, that's what the big problem that I deal with working with small business owners that don't know me that well is that a lot of times they've been lied to a few times before I've got to them, and there's very little they can do about it. I mean, they dealt with a sales rep that wanted a commission, and not all of them are bad, but the lack of control that they have when their company is the one making the decisions, that's the problem.
Right. And that's really what it is, right? How reputable, who you're working with, how ethical are they? And like you said, a lot of people are on commission. The things that I've seen, I felt really uncomfortable working in the credit card industry. So I love having you here. And you were just talking about the stats, right? And some recent stats that I had seen were 19% of Americans prefer paying for in-person transactions with cash. So like you said, most people are using credit cards, but 32% prefer paying with credit card and 44% paying with their debit card. Now, how that ties back into what you were just talking about, that's a lot, right? If 44% of the people purchasing they're not supposed to be getting that surcharge, whatever we're going to call it, on top of the fees, right? If 44% of people are preferring to pay with their debit card, that's a lot of people that they're breaking the rules with.
Yeah. And so at this juncture, what is known is that there are some processors out there that are receiving fines. Nobody really knows how prevalent it is. One person you talk to says everyone's getting fined, the world's on fire, the whole industry is upside down.
Right.
The next processor owner you talk to that's like, we've gotten one fine, no one cares, this is not a big deal.
All right, now, Trey, when you say somebody gets fined, who's getting fined in this?
At this juncture, it's the processing company.
Okay, so it's whoever we're using to process our credit cards.
However, there's an old saying that stuff rolls downhill.
Downhill.
Right. So, and they have it in their agreements where they can increase the cost to compensate for the cost of acceptance, right? Like, these processors, if they're assessed a fine, and that's really the problem. And that is why, like, the reality is, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but my opinion is there's one aspect of this change from Visa that eventually will be taken to court and they will lose on. I don't think they'll lose on the whole thing, but here's the problem. The problem is the exact question that you asked. And it's kind of funny that we're not even 15 minutes hardly into this thing, and you asked that question already. Who's responsible? So who's responsible for enforcing that? As a payment company, right? The processor that I write for, one of the processors that I write for, are they really going to be in charge of monitoring every item on every shelf of every client that they have in the country? Like, how could they possibly be, like, how could that really be feasible? You know what I mean? Like, how could Visa really expect that to happen? And as an agent, if I've given the disclosures and I say, this is how you run this program, and the merchant decides not to at that point, like, how could I be held liable for that when I have a signed disclosure that says I've given you the rules. So that's the question. Like, who is left holding the bag? You know what I mean? Like, how is that going to work?
Who's going to be responsible for making sure that it's done correctly and that people are actually following, business owners are following the rules and regulations, right? Who's in charge of that? And if somebody mess up, who has to pay the fine?
Right. So what happened after cash discounting kind of went to the wayside, where everyone was kind of catching on that these like non-cash adjustments, meaning adding a fee to take it away, like that's not really good anymore. They switched to something called dual pricing, which is a little bit more transparent. You've seen it at gas stations since the 80s, right? It has two prices that flash
cash price, credit card price. Cash,
right?
Remember seeing those? Yeah, and you're right. It was the gas stations we saw that at all the time, and people were used to it.
Right. So from an economical standpoint, it works the exact same way. It's just when you go to the counter, it flashes two prices, a little bit more transparent, less confusing. Visa's actually okay with that. However, here's the big catch. They've said that the higher price is what you have to post on your menu, on your shelf, on your invoice. So the way it's worked is you go to a shelf, an item's $10. You go and check out, the cash price is $10, the card price is $10.30, right? Wrong.
So you have
That's
to
a surcharge.
Advertise the $10.30 price,
correct,
not the $10 price.
That's exactly right. So the way that program has been used is now not compliant unless you're posting the card price. Well, if you're posting the card price, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the program, because the rep went in to try to say, hey, we're going to offset your credit card fees. All it is a price increase. So it can work to offset card fees, but in my opinion, unless it's a very simple service-based industry, it's a huge hassle, right? You got to redo all your menus. If you're a convenience store, can you imagine having two prices on every item? Like, it's just not very feasible unless you're a service-based company.
And then the whole idea of people that are comparison shopping, right? With all the online shopping right now, and online, chances are you're going to pay with credit card anyway. But anyway, right? So the idea is people do comparison shopping, like their little apps. Go here for gas, but it's cheaper here, go there, right? So people are always doing comparison shopping. So now you've got your highest price advertised. That may not be the best price to get your customers coming in the door.
Exactly. So, and it kind of prices you, to your point, out of the being competitive. So there's a lot of changes going on, but the big thing that I do know is that these fines are going to start happening at some point. And
all right, Trey, who's doing the fines? Who are we giving this money to? Who wants our money?
Well, it's Visa.
So Visa's getting fined, or Visa's going to take our money?
Issuing fines.
Visa is issuing the fines, and then business owners are going to have to pay them. Is that what we're talking about here?
Correct. Now, I don't know if that's a week down the road. I know that the new surcharge guidelines go into effect April 15th, meaning the cap going from 4 to 3, April 15th. So that is when they're going to really start ramping up enforcement. Now, some of the conversations that I've had with some executives at some of these processing companies, the doubt was like, how are they going to enforce this, right? How are they going to catch, these programs being run incorrectly? Well, what we found out, and again, this is I don't want to say rumor mill, but it's not firsthand information, but from what I'm being told, and that's the other crazy part, like Visa is not, they're only communicating with the acquirers. They're not putting this out in general press releases. They're not sending this out to the agents. They're not sending it out to the merchants. We're being told from the processors and acquirers that this is what's happening. But when you call Visa, which I called Visa directly and couldn't get a straight answer, but they're like, yes, we're making changes.
I'm going to time out this moment. A lot of people may not understand the whole process of credit card processing. Like Visa's installing They're going to have fines. Okay, but then we talk about business owners. And then we keep talking about processors. Just take a minute and explain how the money flows, how this works, because I don't think people always understand how all that ties together.
Well, so first you have an issuing bank, which is the bank that issues the credit card that you use. Okay. Then you have the card brand itself, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. Okay. Then you have a processor that's a part of a network that is responsible and takes liability for moving that money from the issuing bank to the merchant's bank. Then you have the merchant's bank. So the processor is kind of like a sub entity from the card brand. But at the end of the day, the card brands are the ones that are making their rules because it is a private company. It is their rules to make to use their product. But they're so big that it kind of falls into that, national impact, right? Like Facebook is going through the same thing where like they're a private company, but are they limiting free speech? And do they have the right to do that because they're a private company? So it's a weird area that they're dabbling in.
So Visa makes the rules. The merchants then are the kind of the connector piece there. And so who's responsible for making sure those rules follow? Is Visa going to send out representatives to all the businesses to make sure they're following the rules and regulations, or are the cops going to show up? I'm just saying, Trey, I don't want the cops showing up at my door.
Here's what I've heard. Here's what I've heard recently, actually, that Visa has contracted a third-party company. And they're huge, and what they do is secret shopping. And what Visa is able to do is they have data on all these processors. And what ends up happening usually is a customer will call in and complain. They have a hotline. Hey, I was charged a fee on this, on this transaction. Okay, Visa takes it and says, all right. They can look up the information, say, well, who's the processor? Now they know who the processor is. They have that conversation. It wasn't compliant. Was it not? Doesn't matter. It's on the radar now. Now they can say, okay, well, what other complaints have we gotten from businesses that are processed by this processor? And so they can analyze this data in a way where they can kind of figure out which processors are running what programs. Now from there, they can get an idea of, okay, these are all the merchants that are processing under this processor. So now they're able to narrow down. They don't need to search every business in America. And that's what we initially thought, right? All the processors were like, well, how are they going to enforce this? Are they going to walk into like your point? Are they going to walk into every, business in the country? They don't need to, it turns out. And that was kind of the miscalculation. From what I'm being told, a big miscalculation. And when the main reason for reducing the amount from 4 to 3 is to make those much easier to find. If it's over 3, it's not compliant anymore. And so in almost all these cash discount programs are over 3%.
Okay.
So
let's see, as a business owner, let's put this into perspective for our business owners and for consumers even, right? So as a business owner, you're saying, okay, let me look at what I have. Do I currently have this cash discount concept, or do I have a dual pricing, right? So if we take a look at that, okay, we'll assume, yes, you do. Okay, so if I have the cash discount, am I doing more than 3%? Ding, 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 got a problem. Am I advertising the lower price or the higher price? Ding, 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 I got a problem, right? So there's certain key things you want to take a look at as a business owner to make sure that you're compliant on these things. Like you said, it rolls downhill. So if the merchants are going to get fined for this, merchant services companies and processing companies and all that kind of, right? At some point, it's probably going to roll down to the business owners. So be aware of what the new rules are. That's so different, right? How are they going to re-educate everybody who has this? That's a lot of reach out. In large companies, a lot of times they just send an email out, right? Oh, by the way, this has changed. Those emails that we throw away and delete and don't actually read the fine print. I see some emails coming out telling us about the new rules, and most of us not opening it or reading it.
Yep. I mean, that's being in the middle of it. It's not like any other shift of this size that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? It's so big and so hush hush at the same time. It's a little strange. And everyone, and look, and to be fair, everyone is still trying to make heads or tails of it. It's happening so fast. I think eventually, I think it'll actually be a good thing. The only concern that I have is how is how is Visa going to make a processing company liable for what their merchant posts on their shelf? That is the concern. If we can get that squared away, I'm cool with everything else that they're trying to do, because what they're trying to do is to improve the experience for the cardholder, which I can appreciate. I mean,
Right.
I don't think anyone would have a problem with making a more transparent
Bingo.
experience for the cardholder. Absolutely.
Bingo, Trey. That's it right there. Transparency, right? We're not opposed to transparency, right? But we got to know what the rules are. We got to know how to follow them and how to fix, because as a business owner, right? If you're running that card at the higher rate and then it's going to be, oh, they're paying cash. Wait a minute, let me give you the discount, right? What's going on? But you got to know they're handing you a debit card. Okay, I know it's a debit card. I know how to run this, right? So you're going to have to make sure all your cashiers, anybody who's running those cards, knows the difference and what to hit on what, right? Because if you have a new employee that doesn't know it, right, now you're in trouble again.
Yeah, and look, and here's the thing also, like, I don't want to make the Visa and the card brands out to be the bad guys in this situation, because to be fair on that side of the coin as well, I mean, a lot of these processors were rolling out with these non-compliant programs because it was a gray area, to be fair. It wasn't, they weren't pushing something that they knew would hurt anybody, but because the Supreme Court said one thing and Visa is saying another thing, and they're operating in the middle, right? So there's a gray area there. But they knew that they were operating slightly outside of what Visa was comfortable with. And just because Visa put up with it for as long as they did, and they decided that we're not putting up with it anymore, now it's a problem, right? And so, it's not 100% on the card brands either. And I wanted to segue into the surcharging, which I'm now paying a lot more attention to. And I actually really like this program because it allows a business owner to offset the most expensive cards that they would take, which is rewards cards, right? Anything run as credit gets offset. It has a fee attached to it. But the hesitation that a lot of business owners had in the past with cash discount is adding a fee to every transaction. So if they pay with a debit card, now their customers have a choice to pay with card that doesn't have a fee attached to it. So for auto shops, service companies, it has a ton of applications, but they can say, look, you don't want a fee, that's fine. Just don't pay with your reward with your credit card. Pay with your debit card,
Right.
which is much cheaper to accept. And who doesn't have a debit card, right?
Right. Well, like we were looking at the stats earlier, those are from February 2023, was saying that 44% of people prefer to pay with their debit card anyway, right? So that's perfect.
And
Really
the older stat I want to say was like 80% of every card issued in the country is a debit card. So it's a way for them to offset their costs.
And preferred use. Let's make that the easiest to use.
Right. And I think that is Visa's compromise and what they're looking for. So I don't see, I don't see a problem with it. There is slightly less revenue for the processing companies, but that's the way it rolls, I guess.
Well, and Trey, I'm going to say we've been focusing on it from a business perspective because, being entrepreneurs and business owners ourselves, we're thinking from that area. But let's flip that from a consumer perspective. So as a consumer, with these new regulations, is there anything that we should be looking out for when we're looking at our receipts or credit card processing, anything like that?
If you're charged a fee on a debit card, it's highly likely that it's a non-compliant program. It's something that, you could bring to the business owner's attention. They may or may not understand even what you're saying. They might have just been set up on this program. I I think that from a consumer standpoint, a card holder standpoint, I think it's actually better. Now, this is where I get some pushback initially. It's like, well, hold on. How is it better for a card holder if you're charging me a fee to use my card? How is that better? Well, it's better because that business owner is implementing this program as a way to try to avoid increasing their prices for everyone across the board, right? Inflation is 6-7%. If you listen to the government, it's really more like 8-9-10% on a lot of things and a lot of categories. So prices are going up for everybody. Everyone's seeing price increases.
Right.
So if you have a business owner that is rolling out with this type of a program, the likelihood is they are doing everything in their power to be as competitive as they possibly can with their prices, instead of increasing it 5, 6, 7, 8% with no choice whatsoever. So option A is, hey, I'll just raise my prices 8% across the board, and that's what my price is. Or B, I could do a surcharge program, still have the lowest possible price if you pay me with cash or debit. But if you want to come in with a rewards card and get your miles and your cash back and your bonuses and all that stuff, that's cool. But as a business owner, I'm not going to pay for it. I think that's fair.
Oh, you just opened a whole new can of worms there, Trey, because when you think about it, right, all these cash back bonus programs, the consumers love it, right? But they never stop and ask, where do they get that money from?
Right. And it's always the business owner, right? I mean, you can make the argument that the customer's paying for it anyway, because let's face it, all card fees are built into the price. But the problem is that if I'm paying with cash or debit, I'm paying the same price as the guy that's paying with American Express Platinum and getting all the kickbacks and rewards. So I'm paying a price for a product based on a spiff that I'm not getting, right? So again, coming from that fairness perspective, I'm getting a more fair price. If I go to get my oil changed, I'm going to pay more for the more expensive oil than I am for the cheap stuff. Why? Because it costs them more. So for credit cards, it's kind of the same way. And to your point, banks really don't have a way to be competitive. I mean, no one really is like thinking that their bank is on their side and, wants to take care of them, anymore. So they got to incentivize people to bank with them. So I mean, you see Samuel L. Jackson, pushing Capital One credit cards, and you see, all sorts of double cash back and bonus rewards. And that's how banks are making money now, is by issuing cards, as many as they can.
Yeah, they're in a different industry. It's not just holding on to your money more. It's helping you spend it better.
And especially in now's environment, with these bank squeezes that we're seeing. I mean, who knows how this will affect them? I'll be curious to see. But from a business,
so if anybody is listening to this and they get confused, Trey, and they're like, I'm a business owner. I have some kind of cashback thing. What do I need to do to become compliant? What if I want to switch systems so that I know that I'm being compliant, Trey? Those are the kind of questions you can help with.
Yeah, absolutely. My recommendation is going to be to either A, if you really want to do dual pricing, and there is some applications for it, make sure you have both of your prices posted and transparent, and have a software or a program that can do a true dual price. Most of them out there now are cash discounts, and they're kind of the older program that's not really compliant anymore. Or we talk about a surcharge option, and not every business is suitable for either option. It's a very brief conversation that we could have. It would take us 5-10 minutes to find that out.
Right. So you can give them a hand with that, help them understand what this is all about. Maybe they want to explore options. Maybe they're wondering, hey, I've been doing the credit card. Do I have a good deal? Am I doing this right? Should I be looking at other options? So you've been doing this with the credit card processing for quite a while now. So I think you've seen most of the scenarios. You've seen a lot of the different options out there. So if anybody has any questions, we want them to reach out to you. Trey, how can they get a hold of you?
You can give me a call. My direct line is 214-440-1446. That's my company line. Email is info@PayTech Plus, info@PayTechPlus.com.
That's awesome. So they can reach out and say, you know what, this credit card processing, and most business owners are like, this is confusing, right? We just don't even know where to start with this. So it's nice when you've got somebody that you can trust, that's reliable and ethical, and will help take the time to explain it to you so you know what you're working through. I mean, you've been doing this for ages. Like I said, we've known each other for years now. You've been really helping business owners, get the right system for their business, their industry, and what they need. And I love that about you. When you're not out there helping business owners save $1 or $2 or hundreds or 1,000, right? What is it that you do with your time, Trey?
Oh, well, a lot of it is working on my business, but I do have 3 kids, a wife that's going to nursing school. That's kind of her passion is helping people in that way. Kids are in sports. My daughter's in welding school, which is really cool. Didn't see that one coming at all because she's
awesome.
She's kind of a girly girl, but at the same time is like really into this welding thing, and she's better than all the boys and showing them up and doing her thing. And hey, I couldn't be prouder.
That's awesome. So when you're not working, you're doing the dad life.
Pretty much. Yep, pretty much.
I love it. Well, so if we want to reach out, we'll reach out to you. Hopefully we won't steal too much time away from you from dad life.
Oh, no. And to your point, I mean, anyone that hasn't had their total situation looked at by an independent agent, right, in the last, I would say 3 to 6 months, it's a good idea. A second opinion is always a good idea. And these processing companies increase rates twice a year. Every April, every November, they usually increase interchange, and they increase their little bumps on top of that. So it's always a good idea to have a look at it. And there's a good chance that I can help you. And if I can't, I'll let you know. Well,
and I bet there's a lot of businesses out there probably get their statements and they're reading through going, what does this even mean? What does this say? What is this? It's just a bunch of numbers and I don't understand what it's doing. And you'd be surprised what hidden charges are in there you didn't even know you were paying.
That was like 7-8 years ago, that scenario. So that's how it used to be. It used to be you would get a statement, it'd be super confusing and not know how to read it. Well, since then, they've all gone green and they don't send a statement anymore. You get access to some portal somewhere where you got to have a username, login, password that no one knows how to get to or remember. And if you can log into that thing, then you can read the statement that you can't understand.
So there's extra hoops to get to the part where you don't understand it anyway.
Right, exactly.
Well, that gives you something to look forward to then. Well, so I'm going to say if you've got one of those statements and you don't know what it means, you're a business owner, you had to have credit cards. So you signed up with the first person that walked in the door. All right. You're like, okay, well, I need credit cards. I guess I'll sign up with you because one's as good as the next, right? You don't even know what you have. You don't know what your statement means. You don't know what kind of hidden charges you might have in there where they're charging you extra fees for non-compliance and something that you may actually be compliant in. I mean, there's all sorts of a hot mess in there. So Trey, I'm assuming you can help them make sense out of this hot mess of online paperwork.
Yep. I have a really awesome software where I can quote down to the penny. So there's really no guesswork. It plugs in the numbers. It uses AI. It's awesome. So there's no like, here's what I think I can do. Maybe kind of, this is what it is. And, we go from there.
Yeah, if they want to explore options, reach on out to Trey. Once again, Trey, give them your phone number in case they want to reach out.
214-440-1446.
That's it. You want to reach out to my buddy Trey. I tell you, I bring in cool people you want to know. And I'm telling you, Trey Rush is one of those people. If you're a business owner and you take credit cards, and most of you do, you want to talk to Trey. It's worth having a 5-10 minute conversation just to make sure. He may look at your stuff and say, oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You're good. Which case you're fine, right? But that 5-minute phone call might have made a difference if you're not fine and you wanted to be fine. So, and you don't want to be fined.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it either way, 5 minutes could save thousands. And I know that's kind of a plug for another major company, but
I've been in the industry. I have seen it, Trey. I've seen what you're talking about. I know it. And sometimes, you don't even know there's a better deal out there or another option out there. So reach out to Trey, find out what your options are. I've used him for years. He's my go-to person when it comes to credit card processing, merchant services, and I absolutely trust him 110%. So if you're looking for somebody, you want to have an honest conversation, let you know what this is all about, and make sure that you're compliant and you're good to go for what you need for your business, reach out to Trey Rush. Once again, 214-440-1446. And Trey, thank you so much for coming on today and chatting with us. And that's an end of our episode of DFW Networking Diva. So come back if you want to hear more about entrepreneurial topics, business owner topics, and all the fun things that impact us. And we're here. Come hang out anytime. You can reach me, diva@dfw